Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by Calder, Jones, top, another point fence into the slot, a shot is gone! Josh Perry, in double,
left point, long drive, save, Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, he scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And technically Rosemont, but we'll call it Chicago, Illinois.
Sure, why not? The Wolves do. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 114 for Thursday, October 13th, 2022. If you're hoping for a podcast featuring a review of the first book in the Unorthodox Farming series titled, "Oh Great, I Was Reincarnated as a Farmer," that's oddly specific, but we're not going to be much help with that. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is CC Hockley, the AHL editor of Full Press Hockey.
And I'm Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy.
And as always, we thank you for tuning in with us.
And if you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to preview the AHL's Central Division for the upcoming 22-23 season. We both watch a lot of AHL games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about throughout the season, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, go check that out so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes, and let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes watching the MLB playoffs. It's hockey season now. Baseball is over, especially if you're a Mets fan. You'll never get that time back, so next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey?
Wow, shots fired. Huh. All I know is that the Monsters had to move their game time so that, well, they didn't have to, but they did, so that fans could also watch the Guardians playoff game. So there you go.
I mean,
well,
I am a Mets fan by association, so it's fine.
That's all right. I have no words for the Rockies, so we'll move on.
The word is bad.
The word is bad. Yes, that is correct, but I am just completely stunned that they continue to be so bad. But again, we're talking hockey, not baseball. So we've got 2 divisions down, 1 full conference down, 15 teams. And now we head on over to the Western Conference and the Central Division. You notice my Rockford IceHogs hat. Yes, we're going to talk about the Central Division. And per usual, as we've been doing with these previews, we're going to go in descending order from how the teams finished in the division last year. So, of course, who are we going to start with? The Chicago Wolves. First place in the Central Division and the eventual Calder Cup champions of 2022. Their regular season record, 50 wins, 26 losses. Like I said, first place in the Central. Coaching staff, well, they had to get a new head coach because Ryan Warsofsky went to the San Jose Sharks. So they brought in Brock Sheehan from the Chicago Steel in the USHL. He has not, he doesn't have any AHL head coaching experience, so he's 0-0. He's starting fresh. And the assistant coach is still going to be Patrick Dwyer, Bob Nardella.
All right, let's talk about some additions and subtractions here. Quite a few moves made. Malta Stromwell, Mackenzie McEachern, Lane Peterson, Blake Murray, Tuukka Tikisala, Alexander Pashin, Joseph Labate, Josh Melnick, Ryan Dzingel, Ronan Seeley, William Lagesson, David Ferentz, Zach Sawchenko, and Cale Morris. They also have PTO forwards Brandon Perlini and Nate Soucies. Penn State or Nate Soucies. Always important to point out. Go State. They lost Dominic Bach, Stephen Harper, Josh Levo, Kyle Marino, Richard Panik, Andrew Poldarowski, Spencer Smallman, David Gust, CJ Smith, Sam Militic, David Cotton, Daniel Brickley, Eric Jelena, Josh Jacobs, Tarmo Reunanen, Jesper Sellgren, Artemi Sarakov, Joey Keane, Chris Bigras, Alex Lyon, Etu Makiniemi, Beck Warm, Dylan Wells, and Jack LaFontaine.
It's that last. Go ahead.
Bueller.
Oh, it's that last part that does it for me. 5 goaltenders, like the whole goalie room. Like Peter Kochekov is just like, where did everybody go?
He's the meme from Pulp Fiction.
Just
John Travolta. That's go check off.
Yeah, everybody's stock was super high because the Calder Cup champion, and so they're like, oh, we're gonna try and find contracts elsewhere. An example, Andrew Podorowski. But I digress. Sean, you're on a roll. You're getting started fresh. Let's talk about forwards. Let's talk about the current forward core here with Chicago.
I mean, he's been kind of bounced around in the last few days, but I'm still counting him as part of the roster, and that's Jack Drury. An impressive finish to the season for Jack Drury. 24 points in 18 Calder Cup playoff games. Drury plays an incredibly well-rounded game. Above average puck skills and playmaking vision. His hockey IQ is high, and his work ethic is outstanding. His big standout skill is his shooting and defensive zone play. Drury can find soft ice around the net and finish plays in the offensive zone. Defensively, he does an excellent job in coverage and picks up forwards looking for those sneaky backdoor plays. It's hard to call this a likely breakout season for Drury, as he feels like he's already broken out, but it wouldn't shock me seeing him press for a full-time spot on the Hurricanes roster. And I still think there's that outside chance that, the Hurricanes call him up in like February and he just doesn't come back.
Next up, we have the first new face, rather, in Lane Peterson. He was hanging out in the Pacific Division with a couple teams the past couple seasons. But yeah, it's been a while since Peterson spent the better part of a season in the AHL. It's also likely he won't spend the majority of the season in Chicago. While he's here, though, I expect the same offensive-minded weapon we have seen in the past. He's equal parts finisher and equal parts setup man. His playmaking vision and puck skills, they are at the high end for the AHL. His skating, around AHL average. Defensive game, I think, is improving, but it's still in the neighborhood of league average. All in all, he should be a point-per-game producer for the Wolves this season at minimum.
Let's talk about Ryan Dzingel. It's hard to say what we're going to see from Ryan Dzingel. He spent a lot of time on the IR in recent seasons, and those injuries have definitely taken a toll on his game, as he's never really found that 30 goal scoring pace he showed in Ottawa in 2017-18, which, that feels like it was forever ago. That was a whole pandemic ago, CZ. Still, at the AHL level, I expect him to be more than just a useful offensive player. Good passing as well. I definitely don't expect to see defense from him, though. But as long as he's scoring, I'm okay with that.
Another newcomer, this time from, he's returning to the Wolves, but he played for the Springfield Thunderbirds, the Wolves' Calder Cup opponent, and that's Mackenzie McEachern. Now, McEachern, like I said, he's returning to the Wolves. He spent 2016-18 in the Burgundy and Gold. His game has evolved quite a bit, though. He's still not the smoothest skater, but his puck skills are solid. He's developed into an average shooter. His playmaking vision shows flashes of above-average ability. Big Mac is known for his ability as a battler and a 200-foot player. McEachern excels at winning pucks down low and continuing the cycle. He's also an underrated forechecker as the second forechecker. He's a capable PKer as well. He's good on the penalty kill. He had a fantastic playoffs, again, like I alluded to with Springfield. He formed a third of the identity line for the Thunderbirds, but a lot of that is success. A lot of that it's pretty attributable to the chemistry he had with Dakota Joshua and Will Bitton and how their skill sets meshed really well together. And that really took him steps forward. I think Big Mac still provides value as a top 6 forward, but without those other two guys, Joshua and Bitton, I think he fails to replicate his playoff production.
Noah Gunler's a bit underrated, but I think he has an above average skill set. He's a good skater, has good playmaking vision and puck skills, good hockey IQ. His shot, however, is very high end. Pucks explode off his stick with velocity and precision. The big issue with Gunler is his consistency. He looks like an NHLer at times. He looked like an ECHLer at times. That's gotten better as he's gotten older, but it's still noticeable in an area for him to work on with the Wolves this season. But I think he could be knocking on the doorstep of a breakout season.
Next forward in the top 6, at least from our prediction, we've got Vasily Ponomaryov. That Y in there threw me for a loop. Ponomaryov, he's an interesting prospect and has an interesting last name too. His skill set implies that he should be a productive offensive player, decent shooter, good playmaker, good puck skills, above average skater, strong hockey sense. Those are the tools he brings to the table, and yet he seems to struggle to put it all together, or at least he did before coming to the Wolves last season. Perhaps Brock Sheehan can continue to get more out of him than his KHL coaches did. Ponomaryov, his most apparent skill is his defense. He's a menace to opposing offenses in his own zone. Not as much physically, although he can be physical. He is physical, but he does it by forcing turnovers. He takes away time and space, and most importantly, he gets the puck up the ice the other way quickly and efficiently. If he can continue to find offense that he had in his brief stint in Chicago last season, he could be a dangerous all situations player for the Wolves in 22-23.
All right, that's our top 6 for the forward side. Let's go top 4 for defensemen. Let's talk Max Lajoie. While his production came to earth last season from his 2021 stats, he's still a top pair AHL defenseman, and that's written all over his skill set. He has very good puck skills and playmaking vision. He's a staple on the power play. His skating is good enough to beat forecheckers and join the rush. Defensively, I think his game has improved where he's holding his own in the defensive zone and defending the blue line. I don't think he's ever going to be a shutdown guy, but given his offensive upside, I think defensive competence is perfectly fine. I expect him to be, still the number 1 defenseman in Chicago this year, especially with the big vacancy left by Joey Keane. So I think he will have the opportunity to prove himself, take a step forward.
Next in the D-Corps, Kevin Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald missed all of training camp and starts the season on the injured reserve list, unfortunately. It is unclear when he'll join the lineup, but we're assuming he does at some point. Fitz's offense dried up last season, which it kind of was expected. He's a defensive-minded defenseman by trade. He wins battles at the net front in his own zone, and he shuts down plays along the wall. Offensively, on the other side of the puck, he does have a hard shot, but he doesn't leave the blue line to actually shoot it. He has good puck skills and can skate, but he just doesn't join the rush or engage in the cycle. He's more reliable as a shutdown defenseman paired with a more offensive partner. Everything in balance, right?
William Lodgeson. He hasn't been a full-time AHLer in a few years, and I expect he's likely the first call-up for Carolina when they need a veteran plug-in kind of guy to maybe, play 10 minutes on the third pair or just put his feet up in the press box. But he's a smart defender who can move the puck. His best asset is his defensive zone play. He gets his stick in passing lanes. He's physical. He likes to battle. His skating has improved over the years to be around league average. His offensive skills are decent, but they're not flashy. He gets on the score sheet more in the old school defensive ways, creating plays from the point, good shot selection from distance, and the ability to get it on the net through traffic. He likely won't be flashy or on highlight reels this season for Chicago, but he should be quite effective in his time there.
Last of the blue liners for the Wolves is David Ferentz. Rather surprised to see Nashville give up on Ferentz so easily. His rookie NHL season wasn't stellar, but I don't think it was bad by any means. We'll talk more about Nashville giving players up here when we come to Milwaukee, but yeah, more on that in a bit. But let's talk Ferentz. His skill set has a lot of upside to it. He skates well. His playmaking vision and puck skills are good, but not great. Ferentz is an underrated shooter, but didn't fire the puck a lot last season. In transition, he was solid in getting the puck out of his own net, or out of his own end, rather. Not his own net, his own end, with control instead of just glassing out. Defensively, he still needs a fair amount of work on details and scanning over his shoulder for off-puck threats, but that's not uncommon for a rookie defenseman. He definitely has growth and development to do, but there's talent here, and he could blossom into a quality defenseman this season, especially with, the supporting cast that he has with the Wolves.
Some other notables on the roster. We have to talk about Jamieson Reese at least a little bit. But finding a more frustrating player than Jamieson Reese is actually quite tough. There's raw talent there for sure. He has very good puck skills. He skates really well. He's an above average shooter. But despite being undersized, he's a physical player. But he frequently tries to do too much on his own. He's an accurate passer, but routinely tries to go through defenders instead of just passing to open teammates for like a give and go. He's a good shooter, but fires into close shooting lanes often. I think he probably hit more shin pads than anyone last year. He's occasionally also prone to taking just bonehead penalties. Like, there are good penalties to take at times. Guys shooting at an open net, yeah, you hook him down. If he's going to get a stick on a rebound, maybe, a little cross check. But, just taking slashes as retaliatory penalties, as retaliatory moves, that's not good. Reese has an excellent work ethic and is tenacious in his own end, but his lack of vision has plagued his ability to turn offensive skills into goals and assists. Hopefully he can make more progress with that this year, but I'm not holding my breath at this point.
Another notable guy here, and he's, again, kind of a fringe NHL, AHL player. It's Ryan Suzuki. And Suzuki's going to start the season on IR, but he's already skating, and he should be in the lineup soon enough. Ryan Suzuki is another player who has a problem we've highlighted several times in these season's previews, and that's having all the tools, but having little to no toolbox to put them in. And what that means is he's got a great set of individual skills, exceptional skating, high-end puck skills, good hockey IQ, but Suzuki struggles to put all of that together to actually produce. All of his tools are just strung about the garage, if you want to continue the analogy. Some of it seems to be from a lack of shooting. He's not a good shooter, but he also refuses to shoot. It makes defending him easier because he's just going to pass the puck instead. He also gets tunnel vision to pass to teammates who are clearly not open, or he'll just miss open teammates altogether. Should he find a toolbox this season, he could be somebody, but it's hard to count on that given what we've seen so far.
Last but not least, the notables on this roster, Antoni Honka. If it were up to us, Honka would be a clear top 4 defenseman to start the Wolves this season. However, it's hard to know what first-year head coach Brock Sheehan makes of him, makes of his, first-year North American pro. The skills there are evident. He's a good skater. He moves the puck well in transition. He's got excellent playmaking vision and puck skills. He's a smart player. And yet it feels hard to instantly project him into the AHL top 4 role. His defensive abilities are occasionally, we'll say, questionable. And how a lot of that puck movement and, raw skills translate to a more physical, faster-paced AHL game, as always, remains a question for guys coming over from Europe for the first time. I think he should be fine and perform well in big minutes in Chicago, but there's definitely a path there where he struggles.
Let's shuffle on to the freshly painted, cleaned out goaltending room. New, pretty much new cast of characters, but one guy returning is Peter Kochetkov. And it's hard to make a better first impression rather than what Kochetkov did last season. He very much looked like the goalie of the future for the Hurricanes organization. His skill set has some very good parts to it as well. He moves well. He gets to his angles on time. He has good save selections. His puck tracking, that could use a little improvement, though. There were times that he'd have to rely on his athleticism to make saves because he was behind the play. But all of that said, he's the obvious number 1 in Chicago this season. He's probably going to get some games in Carolina as well.
Backing him up, or at least who we imagine the primary backup to be, is Zach Sawchenko. And if you've seen Zach Sawchenko's numbers from last season, you've probably made some animated faces about them. To be fair to him, the CUDA team in front of him was maybe one of the worst defensive teams I've seen since we started this podcast. Like, it
was horror bad. It was terrible.
It was super bad. It was comedically bad.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's a usable AHL goalie in there in Zach Sawchenko. He moves well. He has good puck tracking skills. He has decent athleticism. I think it's possible that he's a capable backup. But there's also a good chance that not everything that happened last year or even the year before that was all on the team in front of him. So I think this is a big prove-it year for Zach Sawchenko's future in the AHL, but I think there's a chance that he shines.
Let's talk some loose thoughts, maybe even some vibes. Let's talk about some vibes that we get from this Wolves squad, just going over those players and just the overall roster. This 100% isn't last season's Chicago Wolves. Like, I think this is the most departures that any of the AHL teams has this season. If not, it's up there. It's in the top 5. They had a lot of departing cast this offseason. Nearly all the big parts of that team, they're gone. Stefan Nason, Andrew Podorowski, Josh Levo, Alex Lyon, CJ Smith, Joey Keane. You did it earlier, Sean. The list goes on. And yet, I still think this team should be good. I don't think that they're going to be the dominant team that they were last year, but they should still be a contender with a deep roster and a good mix of youths and vets. If Carolina doesn't wreck them with call-ups, they should be in the mix for the Central Division title. And with that said, Sean, do you remember our pick last year for the Chicago Wolves?
I believe we thought they were going to be like a contender, or like they were going to be a playoff team for sure, but they weren't going to be a contender. They weren't going to be a dominant team. They were just going to be good.
Correct. And the model, I think, had them 4th or 5th in the Central Division.
Somewhere in there, like safely a playoff team, but not a world beater.
It was also an exciting episode because that was the one and only one we've done in person. So
that's true.
So maybe that got lost in the excitement. But hey, Chicago, if there's any franchise in the AHL that can scrape up a contender and throw all these ingredients into a vat and just produce a Calder Cup champion, it wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me either, but I think it's at least less likely this season. I still think they're going to be very good. Like,
sure.
Don't have, chase me down and say, oh, you thought our team was. No, I still think they're going to be very good. I just don't know if they're going to be the team they were last year in terms of results. They're already not the team they were last year on paper on the roster, but I think they will still be very good. But let's
temper your expectations. Yeah, let's move on.
Let's move on. We got a lot of teams to cover, a lot of players to cover. So we do have to eventually cut teams off here, even if you're the Calder Cup champion. But let's go. Let's talk about the Manitoba Moose. 21-22 record was 41-31. That was good for second place in the Central Division. Their coaching staff, head coach Mark Morrison, his first year was last year, so he is also 41-31 as an AHL head coach. 1 playoff appearance, 0-1 in AHL playoff series by some kind of miracle. Eric Dubois and Nolan Baumgartner are his assistants. CC, this is not the same Moose team we saw last year. Let's talk what they got going on. Who are we adding? Who are we subtracting?
This is not the same Moose night that we're talking about. Obligatory Penn State alum Alex Limoges, of course. There you go, Shawnee. Saku Manalainen. I should have put the pronunciation in there. Saku Manalainen. We'll say that. Kevin Stienland, Colin Bielik, Joseph Nardi, Ashton Sontner. My goodness. Kyle Capobianco, Tyrell Bauer, and Chris Martinet, although he's kind of more of a tweener AHL, ECHL kind of guy. Oh, subtractions. I got that too. Okay. Christian Vesalainen, got that one easy. CJ Cease, Austin Pagansky, Bobby Lynch, Nick Hutchinson, Todd Burgess, Luke Johnson, Harold's Eagle, Marcus Phillips, Hayden Shaw, and Philippe DeRosier. And there's also a rumor that Mikhail Burden is also not coming back. SKA St. Petersburg. Yes.
Yeah, Mikhail Burden has decided to go back home to Russia. I believe he's Russian. And for whatever reason, he picked now to go to Russia. There really wasn't much more explanation given. I don't have any fun rumblings that I can say. So I actually don't have any fun rumblings at all, not just ones I have to keep to myself. But yeah, so I mean, good luck to him. We hope we see him in the future. He's a fun goalie. But let's talk forwards here, and we start with, Penn State alum Alex Limoges.
Of course.
A finalist for the 21-22 Best Hockey Flow. It took Limoges a while to get going last year. But when he got going, he went He helped turn San Diego's power play from 18th on New Year's Eve to 11th by the end of the season, powering most of that production by himself. Limoges has a skill set that's developing nicely. He's got good puck skills and playmaking vision. His shooting has come along nicely as he has a quick release and adds deceptive layers to it. His skating is still around league average. Defensively, his game is still a work in progress, but it's improving. I don't know if he'll be able to drive his own line yet, but he's certainly capable of a top 6 spot on this Moose roster, I think. And it is what looks like a very deep and challenging roster to crack that top 6 on, but I think Limoges should be there.
Next up is a returning player, Jeff Malott. Malott's development continues to impress. He's followed up a solid campaign in the COVID season with 23 goals, 18 assists for 41 total points season last year for the Moose. Malott, he's at his best in the slot. Malott in the slot. Fits like a glove. He's finding rebounds, getting tips, creating havoc, or peeling off, finding soft ice and ripping high danger shots, or, putting home a penalty shot and walk off Malott, just walking off the ice. One of the best clips of last year. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. All in all, shooting is his signature skill. He is a capable playmaker in tight, but he's better off letting the rubber fly than dishing it off. His skating will likely never be good, and that limits his upside. Defensively, he's capable and grinds on opponents. If he can continue to find chemistry with his line mates, he should have another highly productive season.
Let's talk about the Iceman, Mikey Eyssimont. Eyssimont had a nice breakout season with the Moose last year. Career high in goals, assists, and points. Earned a nice little NHL debut along the way. He showed off an improved shot and better puck skills and playmaking vision than he had in previous seasons. His ability to kind of slide between checks in the offensive zone also boosts his production. I do think he might have hit a ceiling in his production last year and maybe regress a little bit back, but he should still finish as one of the Moose's best forwards regardless, I think.
We go from the pride of Littleton, Colorado, over to fresh face, Brad Lambert. Another first-round pick that's a teenager who's looking to be in the AHL this year. It's a recurring theme, and there's a lot of them. We'll keep it going. He literally just signed an ELC deal as we're recording, so it's lucky for us, being right on the side of this news for once instead of, having it broke on us, having it. But regardless, Lambert's game is fast, skilled, and it's fun to watch. He's able to fly down the ice with high-end skating and attack defenders in the neutral zone with a mix of speed and high-end puck skills. That enables him to attack the neutral zone effectively and create rush chances that other players just can't. Lambert's playmaking ability comes from the gravity that his speed and skill cause. Defenders are just drawn to him, and they try and contain him, and it leaves his teammates in scoring areas wide open. And yet you don't get sent to the AHL without areas that need improvement because it is a developmental league. For as good as Lambert is with the puck, his play away from it isn't as developed, and he's seen stretches where he looks invisible because he can't find lanes for teammates to get him the puck. Teenagers in their rookie season in the AHL typically don't do well. The pace, the physicality, and the improved quality of opponents, that tends to be hard to overcome. Remember Cole Perfetti, even in the bubble 2021 season. Because of that, I expect Lambert to struggle, but I have faith he'll find his game eventually and show what he can do.
Another surprise here in Manitoba. There are a lot of surprises in this lineup, but one of them was Jansen Harkins. He's a surprise because he's, has spent some quality time in the NHL, and he's likely the first call-up when the Jets need, just a veteran guy to come in, play a quick fourth line kind of minutes game, and then head back out. But Harkins should provide an all-around boost when on the ice. He's a quality sniper at the AHL level. He's an above-average playmaker. He's not a great skater, but I don't think he's a bad one. Defensively, he's prone to mistakes, but isn't a liability in his own end. I think the time in the NHL he's had should show when he plays D in the AHL, though. All in all, he should be a clear top forward for the Moose for however long he is there. I do think there's a good chance the Jets call him back up at some point and keep him as a veteran forward.
All right, talking about the last forward here in this group, Chaz Lucius. Lucius has shown varying levels of talent on his way to the Moose lineup. The one constant is his shooting talent, which has always been high-end. He's got good puck skills and can dangle through lesser defenders. His skating speed has held him back, though. as have numerous minor injuries. Those don't help. He didn't look like the same player in college that he did in juniors, and leaving college early for the AHL is likely to make his transition a much harder one. Still, there's a lot of raw talent here, but it's likely he struggles in the beginning with the speed and the physicality of the American Hockey League.
From forwards to defensemen, we are returning what feels like the same defensemen that have been on the Moose for a while now, with the exception of one Jonathan Kovacevic, who got plucked by Montreal on waivers, because apparently that was a thing this year. We were going to make waiver claims as a league in the NHL, where it's like normally every year there's like one. I think there were, 10 this year? That's a lot.
Yeah, 5 in one day.
Yeah. Oh, that didn't screw with us at all.
No, not at all.
Let's talk about the Moose defensemen that are in Winnipeg or in Manitoba, I guess. I mean, it's the same thing. But Leon Gawanke. Gawanke once showed last season that he can shoot at a high level. He uses that threat of that shot to open passing lanes to teammates. His game in transition is improving, but he still makes the occasional glass and out under light pressure, which, I'm not a huge fan of. Plays in transition, leaving your zone with possession are important. He's improved defensively too, but I still wouldn't rely on him in his own zone unless I had to. I mean, you're going to put him out there on defensive zone shifts, but if you're, under a minute to play with a 1-goal lead, he's not necessarily who I'd want on the ice. But as long as he's in the Moose locker room and not the Jets, I do expect him to be their bona fide number one defenseman, or at least the number one defenseman that he shares with the other, 3 basically NHL caliber defensemen on this team.
Another returning defenseman for the Moose is Declan Chisholm. Chisholm's place on the Moose and not the Jets is certainly a head scratcher, but again, they've got a few of those this season. Here we are, another guy on the Moose that probably should be on Winnipeg. Chisholm should be well known to Moose fans, so we'll be brief here. He's an excellent playmaker who moves the puck very well in transition. He can quarterback a power play at a high level. He's good, but not a great skater. Defensively, he's improving, but is still not great in his own end. He's better at defending his blue line than the cycle. He should be outstanding in the AHL, making up a very deep Moose line. And another returning guy is
Vinny Heinola. I'm not sure what more the Jets need to see from Heinola to want to keep him on the roster, but their loss is our gain. He's a solid skating, puck-moving, smart defenseman. Like everyone else, it seems like we've talked about on the defense so far. He can run the power play. He can be impactful on his own end. He's great in transition. He's a decent shooter. Could his defensive abilities be a little bit better? Sure. Could his puck skills improve some? Sure. But none of those should keep him off an NHL roster, let alone the Jets. And yet, here we are, where I'm again confident that he's going to ball out for the Moose and make the Jets think about calling him up and then call him up, but then send him right back down because whatever. Kevin Shoveldayoff does his own thing.
Last guy, he's a new face to the organization, Ashton Sautner. Sautner, he's a defensive defenseman. He's reasonably good at defending the rush. His in-zone defense is around average, which is an improvement over previous years. Ooh. Offensively, well, he's below average. His playmaking vision, puck skills, and shooting aren't bad, but they clearly aren't his focus. Sautner doesn't come off the blue line during the cycle. He doesn't join the rush. He's more likely to go glassing out than try and make a stretch pass. On most teams, he's likely not a top 4 defenseman, but the Moose don't have a clear-cut number 4 with Sandberg and Capobianco on the Jets side of things, so Ashton Sautner is it. It is. I mean, we even had something written up for Capobianco, but alas, it's not to be. So those are the forwards. Those are the defensemen. Sean, let's talk some other notables, shall we?
Kevin Stenlund. Stenlund has always been a kind of frustrating player. He has the tools, but just can't wield them in the most efficient way. He's a good skater. He has good puck skills. He's an apt playmaker. He has shooting talent, but he gets pushed to the perimeter easily and rarely drives to the inside. And as we'll talk about many times and have in the past, that is not a good predicament to be in as a player. He's also struggled with consistency his entire career. I've liked his defensive improvements, but there's still a lot left to be desired. If he can put it together, he can make a splash on this team. but it's kind of hard to predict that at this point. It's just something that could happen, but I'm not calling it likely.
Another notable guy is Daniel Torgerson. Torgerson is physically gifted. He's fast, he's physical, he's big, and he works hard too. All that shows in his forechecking and his defensive play. He's constantly pressuring the puck carrier, and he's always up in their face. His offensive abilities are more questionable in terms of how they translate. He came out of the gates hot in 4 games in Manitoba, but he's never really shown a big offensive touch in his prior stints throughout Europe. He's shown flashes of solid shooting and playmaking skills, but it's never really stuck long term. Perhaps he's able to develop more in Manitoba, but he's likely more of a bottom 6 grinder and a top penalty killer this season for the Moose.
All right. We're going to goaltenders now. And as we already mentioned, Mikhail Burden, the Birdman, sure not appearing in this film this season.
Baka.
Which is...
That's Russian for bye. Come on.
Oh, I thought you were making a bird noise.
No. Das Vidanya. How's that?
Like
Is that better?
Is better. Like
Baka.
you made like
Das
what sounded
Vidanya.
like a sad bird noise. That's why.
Baka.
Anyway,
Sorry, Sean. Oh,
let's
boy.
talk about Arvid Holm. Arvid Holm is a gigantic goalie that uses his frame to fill the net. His athleticism is decent, but it's not great. He struggled with puck tracking in the past. His movement gets busy at times, and I think he could be more poised. However, he's turning 24 and has the raw tools, but long story short, I'm not sure that he's ready to be an AHL starting goalie. But here we are. We need someone to put in the net, and I guess because Winnipeg realizes that Connor Hellebuck is the goalie they're going to run until he dies, they can kind of not have, a pipeline of guys where you're like, oh, that could be a future starter for the Jets. Maybe. I don't know that Arvid Holm is a future starter for the Moose. So, I mean, maybe he could be. There's good, tools on him, but we'll see what he can do.
Garrett Sparks is still a free agent. And they could maybe at least go get him.
I think we've established Garrett Sparks is not the future goalie of any NHL team, but
This is very true. But hey, if you need a veteran in net, I digress. Oskari Salminen. Yeah, he's going to, I mean, that's our prediction for the number 2. And I'm not sure if him or Evan Cormier gets the backup nod, really. But given the contract situation, we're going to go with Salminen here. Salminen. We'll say, yeah, Salminen. From what little I've seen of his game, he's a bigger goalie. He has solid athleticism, and he was constantly good for a team that seemed to rely on him in net to win games. How he translates from Liga to the AHL is a big question to answer. Of course, you always see that in the Europe to US, Canada hockey, North American, but it wouldn't shock me to see him struggle a little bit at first and then find his game towards the end of the year and the holidays.
I mean, yeah, and that struggle between, coming from Europe to the AHL. I mean, the rink is smaller. The angles that you shoot from are different. The play style is different. It's more physical. It's faster. You see more like actual chaos in front of the net instead of like polite chaos is the way I would describe, net front battles in the SHL. But let's talk about the team as a whole here in like a loose vibe kind of way. What are the vibes the teams give off? Mm-hmm. I would say top to bottom, this looks like a solid roster, at least on the skater side. It lacks veteran star power. There's no Poldarowskis or TJ Tynans, but it has depth, much like last season. The defensive group looks solid, but the goaltending behind them is, in a word, concerning. If the goaltending can hold down the forts, this team could contend, especially if the Utes like Lucius and Lambert can excel. That's a question, but I think that even if they are not, studs out of the gate, there is enough surrounding them to definitely still power this team forward. The goaltending feels like a very big if, though, as all the talent in the world skating around out there, doesn't matter if your goalie is giving up 3, 4, or 5 goals a night. You need at least capable goaltending if you're going to be a contender, and that's going to be what powers the Moose this year. They are going to go as far as that goaltending takes them. Speaking
of going as far as the goaltending takes them, Sean, let's talk about the third team here in the Central Division.
Yeah, the Milwaukee Admirals, who lost a goaltender already, just like the Moose.
Yeah.
So their 21-22 record was 39-37. They finished third place in the Central Division. And I just want to say, because we picked them to win this division last year, and that moment in which they were like dead last in the division, and I said, they're coming back. Don't you
worry. Don't you worry your little head. Yeah.
Just want to point that out.
Yes.
All right, their head coaching staff, Carl Taylor, 116-99 as an AHL head coach. 2 playoff appearances, 1-2 in AHL playoff series. Although, to be at least semi-fair to Carl Taylor, he probably got robbed of a deep playoff run in 1920. His assistant coaches, Scott Ford and Greg Rollo. Cece, walk me through the additions to this Admirals side, as there are many.
Yes, there are certainly many. And let's just go ahead and get started with the forwards. Luke Evangelista finally coming to the AHL on a permanent basis. Darn those CHL rules. Navrin Mutter, Marcus Nurmi, Mark Jankowski, John Leonard, Tim Schaller, Luke Prokop making his minor pro debut. Jordan Gross, what a get for the Nashville Milwaukee organization. Keaton Thompson, Kevin Gravel, Roland McCune, and Yaroslav Askarov. Yeah. That'll be another great addition there. But hey, enough addition. Let's talk subtractions.
Matthew Olivier, Grant Mismash, Matt Luff, Joseph Labate, Mitch McLean, Zach Solo, Graham Knott, Rocco Grimaldi, Cole Sherwood, Matt Donovan, Jeremy Davies, Dylan Blugis, David Ferentz, Matt Tennyson, Josh Healy, Frederick Allard, and one Connor Ingram.
Claimed off of waivers by Arizona. How do you let that happen? He's one of the best AHL
We'll get there. We'll get there when
there.
we talk about goaltenders. I will save that.
Sorry.
Save that for when we get to goaltenders. Let's get through the skaters first. Let's start with forwards. CC, kick us off.
Cole Schneider. Can't start with any other one, in my opinion. Schneider's game hasn't changed in quite some time. He is who he is, and that is fine. He's a solid AHL veteran power forward. He likes to get into the slot, and he likes to battle. He's got some solid playmaking vision and puck skills that allow him to find teammates in tight. He's still a decent shooter, and while his skating is diminishing as it does with age, it's still good enough. Unlike a lot of other AHL veterans, though, he doesn't quit when the puck crosses into the defensive zone. Yes, that happens in hockey, too.
If you've ever seen Patrick Kane play hockey, you've seen someone quit in the defensive zone.
Yes, you have.
Let's talk about not permanent AHL resident Luke Evangelista. Evangelista comes to Milwaukee after a dominant final season in the OHL. The skill set he brings to Milwaukee looks very promising. His skating is much improved and is above the AHL average. His playmaking vision and puck skills are NHL level, and his shot has improved a ton and is now what I would think is NHL caliber. I wouldn't be shocked to see him need an adjustment period, as we always talk about. That leap from juniors to the AHL is a large one and bites a lot of very talented prospects. But once he gets up to speed, look out. Luke Evangelista is for real.
We saw that a couple seasons ago during the COVID year, and gosh, you got a taste, and it's like, oh, I want to see more of this kid. We're finally getting the chance to. All right, moving on. Juuso Parssinen. Parssinen is found money for the Predators organization. The lottery ticket, it's getting cashed in. 7th round picks rarely ever make an impact on a team that drafted them. A large portion of them, they don't even get offered an entry-level contract. And yet, Parssinen is in the AHL. His most prominent skill is his playmaking vision. He's capable of driving to the net, pulling up, and finding trailers or passing lanes through the slot to help set up teammates for dangerous chances. Parssinen needs to work on his ability to push the tempo, though. He's not a good skater, but he doesn't seem to process the game at a high speed, which is a problem, as the speed of the AHL is a step up, and the NHL, that's going to be another big step up. If he can keep up, he should be an effective forward for the Ads this season.
John Leonard was 23 and scored a near 30-goal pace in the AHL last year, and San Jose said, nah, you can walk. One man's blunder is another man's top 6 AHL forward. And that's what the Admirals are getting. A gifted skater who can rip pucks with the best of them in the AHL. Now, that's not saying he's without need of work on his game, because that's not true of anyone not named McDavid. Yeah, that's it. That's the list. McDavid. Leonard is a one-dimensional offensive player. He shoots. End of list. His playmaking vision and puck skills aren't that great. His game away from the puck lacks urgency at times. So while he's made some progress in those areas, more work is needed. Still, John Leonard has the rarest and most valuable skill there is, shooting talent. That alone gives him a spot on the power play and in the top 6 for Milwaukee, because my boy can rip pucks.
San Jose let a lot of quality forwards walk this offseason, but that'll be another topic for the Pacific Division episode. Next up for Milwaukee, Philip Tomasino. And I'm not quite sure what exactly to make of sending a player who scored 32 points in 72 NHL games to the AHL. It's curious. I don't get that. Yes, I think Tomasino still has a fair amount of development to do, but it feels like he should be doing that at the NHL level instead of in the AHL. Regardless, Tomasino is in Milwaukee for the first time. His skill set is based on his skating and his shooting. In transition, he can pick up a pass in the defensive zone and just teleport it into the offensive zone. He has ridiculous skill in attacking off the rush and manipulating defenders in space. However, I think he hasn't been able to fully calibrate all of those skills to NHL speed and physicality yet. I think more than anything, that's why he's back in the AHL. He's going to refine and work on the timing of some of his aspects in his game and not necessarily remake them. Just kind of a refining process. Nice little polish.
Another surprise send down to Milwaukee. We've had a lot of surprise guys. It's been a fun time building these outlines. Mark Jankowski, after playing the majority of the last few seasons in the NHL, here he is. He did primarily play in Rochester last season and had good production, but don't let that stat sheet fool you. His skill set doesn't have high-end elements. His puck skills and playmaking vision are around AHL average at best. He's not a great shooter, not a great skater. His biggest asset is hockey IQ and a nose for the net. Jankowski can see moves ahead and then puts himself in the right place. It was remarkable how many goals he scored just being in the right place for a rebound or seeing a defenseman overcommit, finding a lane to get to get open, and then being ready to make the next play. Despite that hockey IQ, doesn't really use it in the defensive zone much, as he's somewhat of a low-effort guy in his own zone. He should be a useful piece for Milwaukee this year, but I could also see him getting some time in Nashville. But he should be a surprising scorer, one that just kind of, how was he just there when the puck was, yeah, he's smart. He's a smart player, and he should be an asset for Milwaukee.
Shifting from forwards to the defensemen, the D-core, let's first talk about Mark Delgaizo. 8 defensemen played at least 20 games for the Milwaukee Admirals last season. Of those 8, here's the list of those returning to the Ads this season. Mark Delgaizo. End of list. It is just like the goalie room in Chicago with the Wolves. They cleaned house minus one guy, Mark Delgaizo. But he might be looking for new friends in the locker room, but his skill set, it still remains promising. He was one of the best on the Admirals' blue line last season in transition. He's a solid skater. However, a lot of his other offensive skills are around AHL average. His puck skills, playmaking vision, and shooting don't pop up off the page, but he's a quality defender in his own end against the cycle. Despite good skating, he struggled to defend the blue line last season against rush chances. With a little bit of growth and development, he could be a do-it-all defenseman and a bona fide number 1 defenseman for the Ads this season.
Finally, we get to talk about Luke Prokop. We thought that he might sneak in last year with some kind of goofy things around the the CHL NHL agreement, but nope, he had to go back to juniors, but he's here now. And while Prokop showed more offense in his last season in junior, I question how much of that will translate to the AHL. What stands out about him, though, is his defense. He can kill rush chances with good skating and well-timed poke checks. He's physical and intimidating, but stays out of the box, an important part of being physical. He's excellent at creating turnovers and getting the puck going the other way in transition. Offensively, his puck skills are decent, but they don't pop off the page. His shot made progress, but I'm not thinking he's going to be beating goalies cleanly, even from mid-range. Prokop is likely a quality defensive partner for a more offensive-minded defenseman, kind of like...
Jordan Gross. Yes. Yeah, Jordan Gross. 2021-22 Best Defenseman Award winner, brings an impressive skill set to the Admirals. Can confirm. I've seen it in person. He drove play up the ice for the Eagles last season. He has a wide selection in his playbook for making offense from the blue line. He had the benefit of Kiefer Sherwood and Dylan Secura last season. I mean, talk about spoiled for riches. But yeah, Gross will jump down into the cycle and pull defenders to him. That opens up lanes to the slot, and he knows it. Jordan Gross has great poise with the puck, too. He knew how to escape pressure and find high-quality scoring chances instead of heaving pucks from distance and praying. He actually can get some good mid-range shots going on. Defensively, he was solid. His play style basically excludes him from being a shutdown defenseman. That's why he was paired with a guy like Dennis Gilbert last season, but he still is more than capable in his own end. Gross is a big get for the Admirals, as their blue line looks almost nothing like it did last season. He's also got another familiar face from the Colorado Eagles that's joining him in Milwaukee this year.
Roland McEwen, following Gross over from the Eagles last season, a veteran of 332 AHL games, which is surprising. I thought it was more. Like, that number sounded low to me, but sure. Elite prospects, they do the counting things. I actually don't know how to count, so I'm just going to take that number as gospel. But McEwen is more defensive-minded as a defenseman. He can contribute some offense, but it's secondary to what he does in his own end. He's very solid defending his blue line because of his good skating. He's also solid defending the cycle in its own end. He can be relied on during close games with a 1-goal lead or on the penalty kill. Offensively, his skill set rates in the neighborhood of AHL average-ish, some a little bit above, some a little bit below. I think he's likely to put up about 20 points this year, but that's about it. Still, a longtime veteran, reliable in his own end. Those are guys you need to fill, defensive spots in your roster, and Roland McEwen's one of the better ones.
I'm going to venture to say the D-core in Milwaukee is probably better this year than last year.
Interesting take. I don't know if I agree or disagree. I think it is more explosive this year. They're a better puck moving group. We'll see how they defend, but I think they're going to be better in transition.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. But all right. Moving on to some other notables. Actually, it's just one, and that's Adam Wilsby. Wilsby could be a sneaky good defenseman for the Admirals this season, talking about that D-core. Not in the he scores a bunch of points aspect, but more in that he does a lot of small, crucial things well that keep the ice tilted in the Admirals' favor. Things like beating the first forechecker, turning dump-ins into plays going the other way, making good breakout passes in transition, killing plays in the neutral zone so they never become scoring threats. Wilsby is a smart, fast-skating, modern-style shutdown defenseman. He has some offensive upside, but seems to be very risk-averse in the offensive zone and will default to making simpler, easier plays rather than attacking and risking turnovers.
All right. Now we have to talk about goalies, and let's at least address the elephant that isn't in the room here.
Yes.
I just we'll take a minute to talk about Connor Ingram and what in the hell Nashville was thinking. Like, Ingram has shown a high level of competency at the AHL level, and that's being very muted. Like, competency is not what he did. He was great at the AHL level across multiple seasons and has carried some questionable defensive teams, including last year's two, results. And yet it's like, Nashville's like, man, but what if we could sign Kevin Lankinen, who's let up, I think it was 42 goals above expected over the last 2 seasons combined.
Yikes.
That was the guy you were like, we got to get this guy if we can for a $1.5 million contract. Or you could pay what is likely a more talented goalie half that money and have him be your backup. Instead, they chose option A, the Kevin Lankinen option, knowing that they couldn't keep Connor Ingram on the roster because, you have to waive him. And spoiler, Arizona grabbed him. And I would venture a guess that they were not the only team that put in a waiver claim for him. There are at least 10 other teams that I would take Connor Ingram over their current backup, including Nashville. So,
I mean, Arizona goes out and picks up Jonas Johansson off of waivers. They put him on IR for some odd reason, and then the Avalanche claimed him back today. And so that was kind of maybe their plan A, but then they saw Ingram come up and plucked him off of waivers. Oh, ripe for the picking. Like you said, 10, 12 NHL teams would bite. They're salivating over grabbing Ingram as a backup. I don't care that he struggled in the NHL playoffs when he got thrown into action against the Avalanche, against the mighty Avalanche that ended up winning the Stanley Cup and only lost 4 times in 4 rounds.
The Avalanche made Vasilevsky look bad at times. I think it's okay that Connor Ingram struggled against them.
Yeah, and if that was the deciding factor, then shame on Nashville.
That's dumb. I hope it isn't.
Super.
All right,
but go ahead.
I think we've done enough here. We're gonna miss Connor Ingram. He got done dirty by Nashville. Godspeed to him in front of the Arizona Coyotes defense in a rink that holds fewer people than Panther Arena in Milwaukee. But whatever. Let's talk about the massive hype train that is following Yaroslav Askarov. It hasn't quite derailed, but it definitely slowed down after last season. However, he only played 15 games last season and just 41 total since being drafted. In those 41, never more than 9 in the same place for Askarov. What he's capable of post-draft is still basically a mystery. It's really hard to say, but he's still ridiculously talented. He's bigger than average and has stupid athleticism. But the areas that need work, I think his stance needs tweaking, as it seems like he leaves space high at times, especially around the glove hand. His rebound control also occasionally leaves something to be desired. My other concern is actually stamina. He hasn't had a full workload in a long, long time. 41 games over 2 seasons since he's been drafted. How is he going to handle playing deep into April, starting 2 of 3 and 2 out of 3 and 5 for his 33rd and 34th starts of the season? Those are legitimate questions. I think he'll be okay, but there is a chance that he's not. But Askarov is incredibly talented. He has a lot of raw talent, but we really haven't seen how that's going to translate, not just to, professional ice in North America, but how that's, looked post-draft. Because again, he hasn't got to play in games too much. So this is going to be a season where do we see the hype train chug ahead, or do they maybe have to make some pit stops?
The known variable of the goalie tandem here is Devin Cooley, quote unquote goalie tandem. Cooley played 24 games with the Admirals last season and posted a .898 save percentage. That's firmly not very good. So when he was announced the starter in the playoffs for Milwaukee with Connor Ingram in Nashville, everyone was like, well, it's been a fun season, but Manitoba's gonna torch us, so adios. And then Cooley comes in and puts on a performance. He took Milwaukee kicking and screaming to a 3-1 series lead just in time for Ingram to swoop in and finish it off. Cooley played a majority of the series against the eventual Calder Cup champion Chicago Wolves, and he looked good for the most part. Now the question becomes, which Devin Cooley is the real Devin Cooley? Will the real Devin Cooley please stand up? The one who showed solid puck tracking skills and a lot of poise and athleticism in the playoffs, or is he the one who looked in over his head oftentimes in the regular season? At 25 years old, are we seeing a step forward, or are we just kind of seeing, flash in the pan? I think there's a little bit of both here. Let's take a balanced viewpoint. It looked a little bit like lightning in a bottle, but I don't think that means Cooley didn't progress to catch it. While I don't think he breaks out this season per se, I do think he'll likely look better than he did last year.
All right, let's take a look back. We've been focusing on players. Let's pull back and look at the team as a whole and give, some loose thoughts, some vibes about them. A lot of new faces for the Admirals this year, as we've covered pretty extensively. They're remaking the blue line almost entirely, and 4 of the top 6 forwards we discussed are brand new to the navy and light blue. And yet, I think this team could do damage this season. The defense, rebuilt as it is, still looks very solid. They have solid forward depth. If they can get the Utes up to speed quickly, or if they can basically just let Tomasino be Tomasino, this has the potential to be a Calder Cup contender, especially if Askarov is anything close to as advertised or as hyped. This is going to be a team that can put a hurting on other teams. And I'm excited to watch it. I think they're going to be very fun.
Do you think they struggle a little bit out of the gate like they did last season?
I think there's a chance for that just because you, again, have a lot of new parts. You have a lot of young parts. We don't know what the goaltending is going to look like. And I think that could be something that takes a while to get up to speed. I think eventually they all get it together. But I think we could be looking at a team that, like, come February, just starts steamrolling fools.
Yeah. This train is taking no passengers. Chugga, chugga, chugga. Toot, toot. All right. We're about an hour in. I think it's about time to take a formal break here. After this brief respite, we're going to get to Rockford, Texas, Iowa, and Grand Rapids to wrap up the Central Division. If you are just here for a different Central Division team, one of the three that we covered previously, we do thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so that you can get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. It's scrolling below. You've got a couple more days to enter our free AHL TV giveaway. Win a team package. You have 3 chances. Go check out the rules at our Linktree page. Scrolling below. Again, linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead.
Also on our Linktree page, place where you can pick up this nice little beauty here.
Yes.
It's a little FYI.
Yeah, Sean modeled a nice Calder Farmstead hat last episode, and this episode, he's got that smooth-looking blue Calder Farmstead hoodie. That's a solid-looking hoodie, man. Cool. I got to give me one of those. All right. Well, we're gonna we'll take a bathroom break. We'll go get some drinks and let the advertisers do their thing. We'll be right back.
We are back from break, and we are here to talk about the Piggies, the Rockford IceHogs. Their 21-22 team record, 37-35. That was good for 4th place in the Central Division. They also have a new team logo this year that is better and improved. It looks less like a children's cartoon logo. I like it a lot. We've been talking for a while that we said that Rockford needed to refine that logo. They got rid of the goofy, like, kid lettering. They kept the hog. I think that's good. It looks basically just like that without the stick in its mouth.
Minus the stick, yeah.
I feel like they could have kept the stick, but it's fine. I'm not. I think it's actually an improvement. Anyway, 37-35 last year, 4th place in the Central Division. Their coaching staff, Anders Sorensen, who is 35-31 as an AHL head coach. 1 playoff experience, 1-1 in AHL playoff series. His assistants are Jared Nightingale and Rob Klinkhammer. CC, they picked up a bunch of dudes. Let's talk about them.
Yes. First off, Luke Philp, Buddy Robinson, although he is up with the Blackhawks currently, Brett Sini, Dylan Secura, Jalen Lupin, he is out 2 to 3 months with left rotator cuff injury, Dave Gust, Bobby Lynch, Morgan Adams-Moyson, Philip Roos, Luis Crever, Adam Clendenning, not Glendenning. There's one of those floating around out there. Andrew Parrott, Coltrane Wilson, Jackson Stauber in net, and also Dylan Wells in goal. Sean, those are the addictions. Those are the additions, rather. Let's talk subtractions.
Dylan McLaughlin, Cam Morrison, Chad Yetman, Brent Connolly, Andre Altabar-Makian goes back to whatever planet he is from. Wyatt Kalnick, Ryan Stanton, Dmitry Osipov, Colin Delia, and sadly, Cale Morris.
All hail Cale, but he's going to be playing for crosstown rival Chicago or Norfolk. We'll see. Top 6 forwards. I mean, we got to start with Lucas Reichel, don't we? I mean, I'm just assuming that Reichel's team physical revealed severe scoliosis from having to carry the IceHogs offense all last season. I was shocked the Blackhawks sent him back to Rockford to start the season. Then I remembered what the Blackhawks are trying to accomplish in the standings this season, and, it made more sense. What did you say to me earlier?
It's the blow it for Bedard.
Blow it for Bedard. There it is. There it is. Rick Reichel, let's keep talking about him. He is an offensive weapon. He will very likely be in the conversation for best AHL forward this season for us if he stays in Rockford for the majority of this year. Reichel's best skill is his speed. He's able to put defenders on their heels and can walk on by them if they aren't careful. This opens up space for him, which he then attacks with passes to teammates in the slot or as trailers on the rush. His puck skills sometimes seem a step behind his skates, but given how fast he moves, that seems pretty fair. He's merely an average sniper, but he's still capable in that regard. He's not a big proponent of playing defense, but I think that's okay given all the offense he makes happen out of thin air. A good offense forgives a multitude of defensive sins. Reichel's special. Hey, enjoy him while you've got him, Rockford.
A returning Ice Hog, Dylan Sekura, coming back for another tour of duty. His brother is not here, though, this time. But Sekura blossomed last season with the Eagles and benefited a lot from his time with Kiefer Sherwood. The two complemented each other well, and they brought out the best in each other. We'll see if Sekura can find that chemistry now that he's back in red and black. Sekura has very good playmaking vision and puck skills. He's always been a solid sniper as well. Sekura's skating is just average, though, and because he struggles to play with pace, he can get pushed to the outside a little bit easily. This is why Sherwood was such a good line mate for him. If he finds time with Reichel, I think they could make some noise together.
Next up, we've got Brett Seney. And going into last season, we kind of wrote Seney off. He looked disinterested in Binghamton's final season, but in all fairness, a lot of players did in Bingo, but I digress. Especially in a season where skilled players were feasting on the watered-down competition, he was famine-stricken. I thought he was likely done in the AHL, and then the Marlies took a shot on him, and that certainly woke him up. Seney's strength is in his skating. He has good bursts and can separate at the AHL level. He also has good puck skills and playmaking vision. He fit well into the Marlies' high-paced, high-slot offensive attack. He's also a solid shooter at the AHL level. My biggest issue with Brett Seney is that while clearly he agitates the opposing teams, he ends up in the penalty box himself at too high a rate. So not only is he an irritant, but he also just is a little undisciplined as well. In my 3 decades watching hockey, I've never seen someone score from the penalty box. So there you go. If Seney can bring the same level from Toronto over to Rockford, south of the border there, the IceHogs won't need Reichel to do it all, and that'll be good for them because, again, the man had scoliosis last season from carrying the squad, so hopefully they'll spread it around with Sekura and Seney and some other forwards we're going to talk about.
One of which, Penn State alum Evan Barrett. Barrett is someone who has skills that just don't really pop, or Evan Barrett is someone who has skills that can pop off the page. Wow, I can't speak today. I really like his playmaking vision and puck skills. He attacks offensive space and finds teammates in the slot for scoring chances. However, his skating holds him back in a big way. Because of this, he can't play with a high tempo. He also struggles with timing away from the puck. And he struggles at times defensively because he lacks the mobility to kind of keep up. Barrett's a smart and very capable 200-foot forward. Active of the skills in his game at a pace that is conducive with scoring.
All right, next up, I got to scroll by Buddy Robinson here because we nixed him because he made the NHL team. Josiah Slavin. I've been impressed with the progress Slavin's made in his game. His raw tools aren't impressive. He's not a great skater. He has around average playmaking vision, but he's made good progress in his puck skills and his shot. Most of what Slavin's game is based on is hockey IQ and work ethic. Like Alex Steves in Toronto, he's added a lot of little things to his game to propel an unsexy skill set into some higher places. He does that like looking off goalies or being able to make moves ahead and anticipate the play. He makes a lot of small moves to buy him time and space and to work as, he buys some time and space to work as well. I don't think he'll ever be a point per game player in the AHL, but he's going to be a dependable top 6 scorer who gets some cup of coffee in the show. And yeah, I think that's certainly in his range of outcomes.
Last, we'll talk about Michael Tapley. Tapley did not have a breakout season in 21-22, but he sure put himself on the map He's a big forward who can make plays in the offensive zone. His puck skills are also above AHL average. He's a pretty good shooter at the AHL level as well. This bears well for his performance in 22-23. However, his defensive abilities underwhelm, and his skating speed holds him back from being able to take that next step forward. I think he can improve on last season's totals, but I don't think that true breakout season is coming.
That'll do it for the Rockford forwards that we're highlighting. Let's talk about defensemen and the blue liners. Adam Clendenning. Clendenning makes his return to the IceHogs for his third stint in Rockford. And no bones about it. I'm just not going to sugarcoat it. Clendenning has a very hard shot, but his shot selection isn't great, and he shoots from distance without any setup or screen way too often. He's a decent power play quarterback and can make plays in the offensive zone. He's decent in transition, but will revert to glassing out too soon when he feels pressure coming on. Clendenning's problem is his skating. He lacks speed and edge work to play or defend with pace. He also takes too many penalties, some of which are related to his struggles defending speed. I expect Clendenning to be on Rockford's top defensive pair for his offense, but I would be nervous to see him in defense-first situations.
Isaac Phillips was pretty solid last year. Managed to score 10 goals, 15 assists, 25 points, which is a pretty solid little season. And he also did so with very little power play time, which is odd. Now, he also shot 10.6%, which is almost certainly unsustainable for a defenseman, but he's a decent shooter. But 10 goals is a total I don't think he's going to match this year. His offensive skill set isn't exactly where you'd want it to be, though. He has average puck skills, average playmaking vision. He tends to make simpler and safer plays than attacking when he has time and space, which limits his offensive upside. He skates well, though, and is a solid defender. He's capable of breaking up plays in the neutral zone. Should he find a bit more offense and maybe get some power play time, I think he can be a much bigger value to Rockford this season.
Next, Ben, we want to talk about is Jakob Galvas. Galvas had a mixed first season in Rockford. There were good signs, there were bad, and oftentimes they were in the same area. One thing that stands out is his skating. He seems reluctant to use it as often, but he should. He showed good offensive zone skills and flashes of higher end abilities. His shot is solid. A few times he'd activate off the blue line to shoot from high danger areas. His playmaking vision in the offensive zone showed flashes as well. Every once in a while, he'd find a seam through traffic to someone in the slot. His defending, though, that was a bit hit and miss. He struggled to defend at the rush at times. He'd overcommit on occasion. However, he also had a good stick and made his fair share of turnovers, too. There's still potential here for Galvas, but there are a lot of small details that he needs to connect.
All right, let's talk about Nicolas Baudin. Certainly not the season that Baudin was hoping for from an offensive sense. Part of me wonders if this isn't as much on him as it is on teammates. I thought Baudin showed a lot of offensive skill. He's got good playmaking vision, good puck skills. He activates off the blue line. He's good in transition. But it seems like a lot of his passes that could have turned into high danger scoring chances just fell dead on teammate sticks. However, he also wasn't effective as a power play quarterback. Defensively, I like his game a fair amount. He defends the blue line well. He was physical without chasing hits. He uses his stick well to get in passing lanes and force turnovers. If he can find ways to be more efficient on offense, I think Baudin could surprise people. But that's, there's a lot of space between here and there, I think.
One other notable we wanted to talk about before going to goaltenders is David Gust. Gust is like a middle-class Mark Jankowski in a smaller body. He's not a great skater, but he hustles hard. His puck skills, playmaking vision, and shooting talent check in anywhere from average to slightly below average. But he plays a smart game, and he can read the play really well. That puts him in places to make big offensive impacts with a lesser skill set. We've talked about guys that are all tools and no toolbox. Guys like Gust are more toolbox than tools. The hockey IQ and hustle alone kept him afloat as a solid depth scorer in the middle six, and that would pretty well be the fact for most any AHL team.
All right. Let's talk goaltenders. And we can't talk the goalie room in Rockford without mentioning its star inhabitant, Arvid Soderblom. If Lucas Reichel has scoliosis from carrying the IceHogs offense last season, Arvid Soderblom has scoliosis from carrying the defensive side of the puck. Soderblom was a finalist for best goalie for us for the season last year for that reason alone. The IceHogs, in no uncertain terms, relied on him to close out games. And Soderblom did so with an NHL caliber skill set. He tracks the pucks at a high level. He has solid technique and keeps calm when there's chaos going on in front of him, which was often. His athleticism is around average, so he has to stay ahead of the play in order to compensate at times. But it wouldn't shock me to see him get an extended look with Chicago this season. I was surprised he didn't get their backup spot, but, kind of like Milwaukee. When you have a chance to sign a 35-year-old who was below replacement level just last season in the AHL to your NHL backup role, you just got to do it, right?
Right. Makes perfect sense.
Definitely.
Let's talk about the second guy in the goalie room there in Rockford, Jackson Stauber. The lead candidate to back up Soderblom is 23-year-old Jackson Stauber. If Dylan Wells gets the gig instead, Godspeed to the IceHogs in his games. Stauber's game isn't one I'm terribly familiar with, as he's an undrafted goalie, and there isn't a lot of his film available to me. If it's any consolation, Soderblom was also an undrafted goalie. So there's that. But back to Stauber. He's young, he's got good size, and was very successful at Providence College in the Hockey East Conference, division, whatever you'd like to call it. Hockey East is one of college hockey's toughest divisions, too. And it's produced a lot of pro goalies at the AHL level and higher. Just a small handful of guys here. John Gillies, Texas Stars starter Matt Murray, not the one in Ottawa currently. Caden Primo, Ben Bishop, Scott Darling, Jeremy Swayman, Garth Snow, etc., etc. Stauber's dad was also an NHL goalie for 5 seasons in the mid-90s. So if nothing else, he's got a resume that should translate to AHL success, but we'll see how that plays out. He could be Caden Primo. He could be Jeremy Brodeur.
Jeremy Brodeur went to college?
Well, I was talking about dads playing in the NHL.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, that was the comparison I was making there. Sorry.
No worries. I was about to say, I don't think Jeremy Brodeur went to college, but whatever.
I don't believe so.
Lots of guys didn't go to college, Ruxin. All right. I have to pause here because I want to talk some loose thoughts about the team.
Yes.
I kind of like this Rockford roster, which is not a sentence I've said about Rockford's roster since we started doing this show. But they've added some offensive pieces like Sakura and Senny. The depth behind them is concerning, especially as Chicago is not so secretly in the blow it for Bedard sweepstakes. Typically, that means extended call-ups for guys like Reichel, Slavin, Barrett, etc. And that's going to hurt if and when it happens. The defense also has decent talent with some upside, but one injury to, let's say, Adam Clendenning could drastically shake it up for the worse. If Arvid Soderblom can be a hero in net once again, and they can keep players in Rockford and not in Chicago or on the IR, the IceHogs could comfortably make the playoffs here. However, I think it's a little more likely they're fighting for a playoff spot in the closing days of the season. But I think they still are at least semi-firmly a playoff team in this division, which, that's not a thing we have said about Rockford or fans have experienced in Rockford in quite some time.
Yeah, to be bullish on the IceHogs, like in this economy?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
I'll take that, because you're oftentimes unabashedly pessimistic when it comes to these.
Well, no, we're going to get to the unabashedly pessimistic parts. Don't you fucking worry.
Oh, we'll get there. We'll get there. Don't you worry. I've got some editing to do there, I guess.
It's late. I'm tired.
It is late. You're good. Next up in the Central Division, we're going to be talking about the Texas Stars. 2021-22 regular season record was 32 wins and 40 losses. That clocked in 5th place out of the 7 teams in the Central Division. The coaching staff. Head coach is Neil Graham, 49 wins, 61 losses as an AHL head coach. He's got one playoff appearance, and he is 0-1 in that sole AHL playoff series. Assistant coaches, both former players for Texas, Travis Morin and Max Fortunas. Sean, you are going to have the pleasure of talking about both the additions and the subtractions for the Texas Stars.
All right, let's talk about the additions first here and start with the Mohawk man himself, Antonio Stranges, Frederick Olofsson, Matej Blumel, Maché Blumel, Riley Barber, Ryan Domowski, Justin Ducharme, and Will Butcher. Subtractions are Jeremy Gregoire, Joe L'Esperance, Anthony Lewis, Josh Melnick, Yevgeny Oxentok, Matt Jarusik, Colton Point, and Jake Ottinger. Technically, Jake Ottinger is still in the organization, but
he's not coming back to the AHL. No, he played some games for Texas last year, but I firmly planted him in the departures.
He just got a new contract too, didn't he?
He did. 3 years, all one way.
Yeah, he's not coming back.
No, absolutely.
I mean, not that it was. Yeah, he's not coming back. All right, let's talk top six forwards here. CC, start me off with a familiar face to us, but a new face for Texas.
Well, at least in a green jersey, for sure. Riley Barber he was used to wearing a Griffins jersey, but now he's going to be wearing Texas in that victory green. I don't imagine much is going to change with Barber's game at this point. He's got good puck skills and he can skate well. He's an okay playmaker, but that's not his primary skill. His primary skills, plural, are shooting, especially on the power play. So shooting and on the power play, okay, that's just a skill. Barber is best setting up on the left faceoff dot and just blasting one-timers. In Washington, D.C., fans call that the Ovi spot. In Texas this year, that left faceoff dot, that's going to be the barbershop. Defensively, he's not going to give you much at all, but he makes up for that with his scoring touch. Again, a good scoring touch will cure a multitude of defensive sins.
All right. If you haven't seen Antonio Strange's heel-to-heel goal from the OHL, hit pause right now. Go search for it. Just Antonio Strange's heel-to-heel goal. You'll find it. It's an absolutely beautiful goal, and you don't see guys skate like that very often. And yet, I don't think that highly of Strange's skating in general. He's got good edge work, but he lacks that separating speed. He has a good skill set, though. He's good playmaking vision and puck skills. He's a decent shooter. And you'll see him use that heel-to-heel technique a few times. Sometimes, maybe not when he should. But still, he has good hockey IQ and knows how to find soft ice in high-danger areas when he's away from the puck in the offensive zone. But there are questions about his game. He's undersized and, as I said, kind of an average skater. And he's gotten pushed to the outside at the junior level a bit too often. I don't know if he finds more inside lanes coming into the AHL. That's not usually how that progression works. While he has good playmaking vision, he's also prone to tunnel vision in moments and misses open teammates. I think he has a potential to be a solid contributor to the Stars this season, but he could struggle as well.
I think Stranges could pull Riley Damiani from a couple of years ago and maybe not win Rookie of the Year, but I think he could definitely be in contention if all goes well and he adjusts to the AHL game.
I know who I have my eye on for Rookie of the Year, but we'll get there.
Okay. Sounds good. Next up in the forwards core is Maverick Bourque. Bourque, he's got some serious skills. He is a high-level threat in the offensive zone with his shot and playmaking vision. He can deke through defenders with his puck skills. However, I do have concerns about his skating. He struggled to play with pace and relied on hockey IQ to be able to see ahead and to be in the right spot. That can work well if you have other skills at the junior level. How he adapts to an AHL pace and the adjustments he's going to have to make, that's the question. He played half a dozen games for the Stars already, but that was in 2021, the bubble year, very watered-down AHL. He has a lot of potential, and he is going to produce this season, but how much is the big question? And you want to talk about a good COVID year, the 2021, we're going to talk about our next forward.
Riley Damiani. A little bit of a step back for Damiani last year, and there's really reason to believe a bounce-back season could be coming through. Not the best skater, Damiani has decent skating, but his hustle, refined puck skills, and hockey IQ allow him to play with pace. He's a good shooter and a playmaker because of his ability to drag defenders with him as he sprints to the net. Defensively, he shows more of that work ethic, but not always in the right spots. He'll abandon assignments to pressure puck carriers. He will leave the place he's supposed to be in the defensive zone to go try and attack the puck carrier. And he'll just lose track of, his assignment and let them go by him. He can be okay if that can be okay to, occasionally have some defensive lapses if you're making the offense flow, but it's not going to endear him to coaches, especially at the NHL level. So if he wants to, make a stand in Dallas, he's going to need to improve on some of those areas.
We go from a guy still kind of cutting his teeth in the AHL to more of a veteran in Curtis McKenzie. Of course, another solid season from him. He's a good veteran leader who plays a power forward game. If you're unfamiliar with the veteran captain of the Stars, McKenzie's big selling is his ability to finish in tight, whether that's shooting his quick release, heavy wrist shot, or banging home a rebound. Getting a tip, finding a teammate for the tap-in, he does it all. McKenzie's physical, and he can be a good forechecker, despite his skating being below average. Again, that tends to happen when you increase in age. But all in all, he's still got gas left in the tank at 31 years of age, and he should be a useful top six forward for Texas this season.
Last but not least, let's talk about Oscar Back. An okay showing from Back last season. I don't think his offensive skill set is a big selling point, though. He has good hockey IQ and a strong work ethic, but the raw tools just really aren't there. He's below average as a playmaker. He isn't a great shooter. Back's real selling point is his ability as a defensive forward. He's incredibly reliable in his own end and can shut down plays and kill penalties at a high level. That'll endear him to coaches and keep him in the lineup, but if he wants to take steps forward in the Stars organization, he's going to need to sharpen those offensive tools.
Moving on from the forwards, we're going to talk about some defensemen. And can you at least introduce this name? Because you're the one who gave him this moniker.
That would be Thomas Nightrod Harley.
Nightrod Harley, yes. It's one of your more solid nicknames. I think actually pretty much all your nicknames are solid. I shouldn't shortchange you on that. Thomas Nightrod Harley still has the skill set you want in a top 4 NHL defenseman. He skates at a high level. He's got high-end playmaking vision and puck skills, and he's a lethal shooter. Harley still has some timing and puck management skills to work on in the AHL, which is likely why he's back down at this level. He's also not the greatest in his own end defending the cycle. Still, I expect him to be pushing for time in Dallas again this season, as a near point per game caliber AHL defenseman.
Let's talk about Ben Gleason. Gleason came back from a reasonable 2021 in the bubble to put up a solid 21-22 season. Gleason's game is mostly powered by a big offensive toolbox. He has higher-end puck skills and playmaking vision. His shot is good, but not great. His skating is improving, but is still around league average. He gets by. His biggest problem has always been his defending, and he doesn't exactly have the best puck management. He tries to spring guys for breakaways, throwing those big stretch passes through the neutral zone that get picked off. I think that's something that needs improvement and has been improving for a bit of time, but I want to see that gone from his game. Not to say he should never take risks and make stretch passes, but he needs to time those better. If he can do that, I think he can establish himself as a number 1 defenseman in the AHL, but for right now, he's just in the mix in the top 4 in Texas.
Another guy returning to Texas this season is Ryan Shea. And I don't know if I'd call it a breakout season last year for Shea. He had some good skills, but I think his stats may have outkicked his abilities. He had 17 secondary assists last year. That typically doesn't translate to repeat performances. His skill set is decent too. He's an okay skater, but he struggles to separate from forecheckers with his speed. He has good puck skills. His playmaking vision is decent. Most of what his offense lacks is a more polished skill set and a willingness to join the rush on the cycle. Shea doesn't activate very often into either, and I think that hurts his offensive upside. In the defensive zone, he's okay. He doesn't shut it down, doesn't really get burnt. He more or less just holds his own. I don't think we see the same point totals from him this season, as I think he projects more as a garden variety second pair defenseman. So there's that.
Will Butcher should be an interesting piece for the Texas Stars blue line. Butcher was mostly a power play specialist in the NHL and could move the puck well. He also had an above-average shot at the NHL level. In the AHL, I think he's going to be a little bit like Michael Del Zotto on the ice last season in that he can flex an NHL toolkit on AHL players. Defensively, he hasn't been that reliable in the NHL, but we could see him do more in his own end with the pace and talent that is a little bit slower than what he's used to. All in all, I think his game should be entertaining for Texas fans.
Another notable guy we wanted to talk about, just one for Texas, and that's Fredrik Olofsson. Olofsson comes back to the AHL after a solid season in the Swedish Hockey League. Olofsson looks a lot like, well, he looks like he should be a reasonably okay forward at 5v5, but he appears to be more of a power play specialist. He has a great one-timer and scored a lot from the right faceoff dot in the SHL. If the barbershop's going to be in the left faceoff dot, then hey, he can have the right one, right? He is an average to above average playmaker with good vision, but not always the puck skills required to pull it off. He's not a great skater, but he does hustle. Defensively, I don't think he'll be great, but I don't think he'll be bad either. Not a penalty killer or late game defensive hero, but I think he doesn't get torched. I could see him as a middle six role with good production, and you might as well put him on that second power play unit too.
All right, from the skaters, we head to the goalies, and we have to talk about the Texas Stars, Matt Murray. I wish he had like a middle name that we could go. We could, because it's really confusing.
I'll look it up. I'll look it up so we can differentiate between the two.
All right. Matt Murray isn't the biggest goalie, but he has incredible athleticism for a goalie his size. As we saw last season, he can make some of those highlight reel saves going post to post to rob someone. He's also an excellent puck tracker. His biggest weakness, though, is control. He has the athleticism to make the big pushes post to post, but sometimes he needs to make smaller ones and overshoots. He's also prone to falling for shooters' deceptive moves, like looking past and then you just rip the shot. He's also had some problems with pucks from odd angles low in the zone. Like most athletic goalies, though, when he's on, he's on. We'll see if he can build on that strong run at the end of the season, but I think he could be a solid starter for the Stars this season.
Absolutely. And they're both Matthew Murray, which totally makes sense, but I'm not finding middle names for either of the Matt Murray.
I wasn't sure like if you were going to go to, the Hall of Records to find his birth certificate and get a middle name.
Sometimes elite prospects includes a middle name. And I figured for Texas Stars Matt Murray, there might be, a differentiation there. But
we're going to have to come up with a nickname for him at some point this season.
Yeah, we'll see what sticks.
Yeah.
All right, second goalie in the room out of 3 is Adam Scheel. And, not a bad season for Scheel last year, but not exactly an outstanding one either. I think Scheel excels at reading the play. He moves well, but I think his lack of higher end athleticism and poise, that doesn't really do him any favors. It's hard to say what he becomes in the future, but I'm not terribly comfortable trusting him as more than a backup. He's better than Colton Point, though, in my opinion.
No, that's not saying much.
Yeah. But we have a third goalie in the room, too.
All right, let's talk about Antoine Hudobin. I'm not sure what to make of Hudobin being in Texas again. He seems to be a cap casualty here and will be staying in Texas for a bit. We're assuming, so I guess we talk about him. He's still a solid goalie, even at 36. He's coming off some major injuries, so we'll see if he still has it. But, at the AHL level, if he's healthy, he should be rock solid as his technical structure, movements, all of that are way above AHL average. But that was also when he was a lot healthier. It's hard to say what we get from Dobby this season, but potential is there for him to be rock solid and a mentor to the younger guys.
All right, we're done covering all the individual players. I think it's time to feel the vibes in the room down in Cedar Park. See what this team, loose thoughts on this overall team. All right, well, I'll tell you, Ty Dellandrea and Jake Ottinger, they've clearly graduated to Dallas. No question about that. Anthony Lewis, Joel Esperance, they're gone. That leaves some big holes in the Texas Stars depth chart. Riley Barber is a good addition. Maverick Bork and Antonio Stranges, they have potential, but is that enough this year? I think the Stars are competitive this season, and that goaltending and defense keeps them in games more often than their offense does. But this looks like a team that squeaks into the playoffs, kind of like what they did this year.
You mean last year?
That's what I meant last year. Yes.
Yeah,
It all blends together.
That's kind of my thought too. It's the bottom of the Central Division, I feel like, is very wishy-washy. Like, everyone's like, I could see that team being good. I could see them being not a contender, but like not the last team in the playoffs in the Central. It feels like there's 4 teams that are in that neighborhood, which is not unlike last year. All right. We go from one team that wears green to the other team that wears green in this division. The Iowa Wild. Cece, tell me about the Wild.
Yes. Yeah. So 2021-22 regular season record, 32 wins, 40 losses, 6th place out of the 7 teams in the Central. Coaching staff, head coach is Tim Army, 222 wins, 263 losses as an AHL head coach. He's got 3 playoff appearances and is 1-3 in AHL playoff series, only 1 victory. Head coach, we already talked about the head coach. Assistant coach is Nate DeCasmiro and Nolan Yonkman. Nate DeCasmiro. Sean, talk about additions, because apparently my mouth isn't wanting to cooperate anymore.
That's fair. It's late.
Yeah, it is late.
Additions are Sam Hentages, Mike O'Leary, Stephen Fogarty, Nick Batan, Tanner Kaspick, Ty Ronning, Sammy Walker, Simon Johansson, Ben Finkelstein, Andre Schuster, Jesper Wallstadt, and CJ Mott.
And for subtractions, Cody McLeod retiring, taking a developmental job. Kyle Rao, Nolan Stevens, Chris Bennett, Bryce Meisley, Alexander Hovanoff, Bryce Gervais, Dominic Turgeon, Kevin Churchman, John Lizotte, and Keaton Thompson. All right, let's talk Iowa forwards. Sean, you have the floor.
Sophomore campaign. He's got good puck skills, can battle in front and gets his stick on rebounds. His skating is quite good, and he has a top speed that can threaten defenders on the rush, as well as allows him to forecheck well effectively. He made progress in his hockey IQ and found better timing for his off-puck game. I do like the detail defensively that he uses as he gets his stick in passing lanes. He can kill penalties. He's a useful defender. If he can keep progressing, he could finish the year as a bona fide first-line center, although I think that's a very high expectation for him. I could see him following a little bit closer to like second-line center caliber play.
Next forward in the Iowa Wild core we're going to talk about is Adam Beckman. So Beckman was 10th in the AHL in shot volume last season. He scored 11 goals and shot 5.4%. If there was ever a statistical aberration that's bound to get corrected, it's got to be that one. No doubt. Beckman has a very good shot and has the volume to reach high goal totals. Watching his tape from past season hasn't dissuaded me from that opinion either. There's a lot of luck involved in scoring goals, and I think a lot of Beckman's goal scoring woes last season are more bad luck than anything. The rest of Beckman's skill set, it's just good. He's a good but not great skater. He's got good hockey IQ, decent playmaking and puck skills. What he needs to work on is being more reliable in transition and also being reliable away from the puck in the offensive zone. If he can take steps in those areas, he has a shot to be a top AHL forward this season and maybe even pushed for some time with the Minnesota Wild.
Let's talk about Nick Swaney. I mean, that man started last season on a PDO bender. I remember at Halloween, he was the Wild's leading scorer, just like we all predicted. 7 goals, 4 assists, 11 points in his first 10 games in the season. And we said on the show that production was likely unsustainable, and the next 8 games he had 1 point. Now, Nick Swaney still finished the season with a solid 16 goals, 22 assists, 38 points in 62 games. And he has a solid skill set, but not one that stands out as having higher end elements. You know, he skates well and has NHL speed. He also has a good work ethic and a solid hockey IQ on him. He's a reasonably good shooter. He has good puck skills, good playmaking vision. He's capable in his own end, but isn't a defensive hero. For that skill set on him, you know, I don't think that's one that makes him a point per game forward in the AHL, but he should settle in as a solid second liner in Iowa this season.
Next forward here, Stephen Fogarty. Fogarty's an AHL veteran who displayed good leadership as well as offensive skills in the past few seasons. His puck skills and playmaking vision, they're both above average. While not often, he occasionally can deke past a defender cleanly and create small 2-on-1s low in the zone because of it. He's a decent shooter, but a better playmaker. His skating has never been a strength, and he's limited in his ability to play with pace to the neutral zone. Defensively, he's always been solid and created offense without sacrificing his responsibilities in his own end. So, yeah, solid addition there to the Iowa Wild.
Next, we're going to talk about Nick Petan. Another very strong season from Petan in Abbotsford last year. He has good playmaking vision and is an above-average shooter, but isn't terribly physical and gets pushed to the outside a little bit 5-on-5. However, that's not a problem on the power play where he can use his playmaking vision to find seams and can set himself up in good position to bang one-timers from both hash marks. His puck skills are average, and he regularly struggles to catch passes cleanly, which is a weird problem to have as a productive AHL forward. He's not a great skater and has to play dump and chase in spots where I think a better skater could gain the zone. Defensively, he's capable, breaks up plays, but he doesn't have that intensity to really be more of a defensive specialist. Maybe not a specialist, but a strong defensive player. I still expect him to be a top 6 forward in Iowa this season, but the majority of his value, kind of like Sam Annis when he was in Iowa, he's a power play guy.
Yeah. Last forward we're going to speak on, at least in this main top core, is Mason Shaw. And I like Shaw's game a pretty fair amount. He's not the most talented, but he does a lot of little things well. He wins board battles. He's an excellent forechecker. He can transport the puck through the neutral zone. That gives him the ability to play up and down the lineup. He has that versatility. That's not to mention that he's got solid playmaking vision and puck skills, and that makes him a useful playmaker as well.
All right, let's shift to the defense, and let's talk Joe Hicketts. A very solid season from the ever-physical Hicketts. I do think he outkicked his coverage a little bit. He's not a great shooter, and while I think he made progress on a shot, shooting 9.2% is likely unsustainable, and I expect him to return to middle single digits in goals. He's mobile and an okay but not great skater. He makes a good first pass to get the puck out of his zone and start transition. But he's always my favorite example of being physical while being a smaller guy. I always say, being a physical hockey player is a mindset. It's not a body size. It's not a how much you can bench press. It's your willingness to step up and throw your body around. And Joe Hicketts is someone who's going to lay big hits, but he's not going to go to the penalty box about it. Offensively, he's got some puck skills and playmaking vision, but overall, I think he's a little bit more of a defensive defenseman who can chip in some offense as opposed to the other way around. I think he's a solid second pairing defenseman, but is likely going to be asked to take on a bigger role this season, which I'm not thrilled about.
Next D-man that we're going to talk about is Damon Hunt. Hunt has been nicked up a bit through his junior career, which isn't too surprising given his style of play. Spoiler, he's a physical, gritty defenseman. But he also has offensive abilities as well. He's a good puck mover in transition. His playmaking vision and puck skills are around average. His shot, it's NHL caliber, though, not AHL, NHL caliber. He's a strong skater, too, who can generate power quickly. His defensive game should also translate as well, as he was a shutdown demon in juniors. And the raise in competition in the AHL, it shouldn't keep him down that much. He's likely to have a big role on this team from the beginning, and I think he's going to do well with it.
Let's talk about Ryan O'Rourke. So far, we're 3 for 3 on physical defensemen with Hicketts, Hunt, and now O'Rourke. But O'Rourke is probably the most violent hitter of all of them and seems to have a bit of Scott Stevens to his game. His offensive skills are still very raw, though. He has a hard shot, but he doesn't really set it up well. He has okay puck skills, but he struggles to execute at times. He has good playmaking vision, but he's missed a teammate or two in his day. Still, he's valuable in his own end. He's good in transition. He should be able to hold his own in those minutes, but the offensive output might not be there from him this season.
Lastly, a familiar face to Iowa, It's Dakota Mermis, and the Merman starts the season on injured reserve, but he is expected to play in Iowa when he recovers. He is a strong skater. He is good in transition. His hockey IQ is good, but not great. He defends both his blue line and the cycle very well. He's also a physical defender who will throw his body around. I'm sensing a theme here. Offensively, he has some good qualities and will activate into the cycle at times. His puck skills are limited. He's not a good shooter. He should be a solid, if unspectacular, second pair defender once again for the Wild when he does get healthy. Sean, we got a couple notable guys here.
Yeah, good amount of notable guys here. Let's talk first about Vladislav Firstov, because that makes sense, from a grammatic perspective. He only managed to sneak into a few games last season and wasn't given a lot of minutes to kind of get going. But he's someone who has a lot of raw skills for sure. He's a solid sniper. He has good playmaking vision. He can find teammates through traffic. I think he skates pretty well, but he's struggled at times to play with pace. Defensively, you see that aggressive physical presence. He'll engage, with puck carriers in the defensive zone and, take pucks off of them using his body to separate them. The downside for him is going to be getting used to the pace of the AHL. As I said, he struggles to play with pace at times, and under pressure, he'll default to safe plays instead of battling through and creating offense. If he wants to be a difference maker, he's going to need to work on those abilities if he wants to, be somebody in Iowa this year.
The other notable guy we wanted to talk about was Michael Milne. We've debated leaving Milne off the list because, well, we decided to include him at the last minute. Let's detail why. Milne's stats from last season in junior are impressive, but I think they tell the wrong story of what his game truly is. Like several others in our previews, Milne isn't reliant on an impressive set of tools. He's a lot more toolbox and not a lot of tools, which means he relies more on hockey IQ and work ethic than the raw skills like shooting, skating, and puck skills to produce. He's a physical player as well and can make plays in the D zone, but he's going to need to make adjustments at the pace and caliber of play. It's about to go up a lot for him. And while he has the smarts, it is going to stress his abilities, and I think he struggles a bit in the beginning. But there is a good player in there, but one that requires maybe a little bit of patience and development.
Those are our skaters. Let's talk about our goaltenders. One familiar face here is Zane McIntyre. McIntyre came over from the goalie's worst nightmare in Tucson via trade to really help Iowa push for a playoff spot last season. They ultimately fell short, but I don't think that blame falls anywhere near Zane O'Mac. McIntyre does everything well, but nothing outstanding. He tracks the puck well, he moves well, he has good technique. He's not the most athletic goalie and has struggled with consistency in the past, but he's been overall very solid the last few seasons in the AHL. And while I don't expect another 920 save percentage season out of him, I don't think he regresses by very much.
Yeah, it's easy for you to say. Little tongue twister there. Next up, Jesper Valstead, the much hailed goalie of the future of the Wild organization. Tops of a lot of NHL goalie prospect lists out there. Valstead is an aggressive goalie who likes to play at the top of his crease. His biggest asset is his puck tracking. He rarely seems caught off guard with puck movement and is able to make saves because of it. He moves well, too, and doesn't get flustered very easily, which, of course, both big pluses for a goalie. So his aggressive style may need refining as he faces better shooters in the AHL. He doesn't have that elite athleticism. He's not always able to recover and make those explosive saves in time. Those are definitely going to be side effects of not having that super high tier athleticism. Still, he's one of the most heralded goalie prospects, like I mentioned, and it should be interesting to see what he can do. It's going to be an improvement over, Derek Barabow and Hunter Jones that did some time in net.
I will not have the defamation of Derek Barabow on this podcast. Hunter Jones, though, that's not defamation. Those are just facts.
Yeah.
Gonna a goal from center ice. That's
yeah. Anyway, Jesper Valstead. Looking forward to some good things there in Iowa.
All right. Those are all the skaters. Let's pull back and talk team. But let's just, keep it loose. Keep it friendly. No. Let's keep it friendly. Let's just keep it loose. Give some vibes.
Vibes.
I will say the inevitable graduations here of Rossi, Boldy, Addison, and Dewar. I mean, they were inevitable. Maybe Dewar comes back for a bit, but probably not. Kyle Rouse also gone. Filling that void are good additions like Fogarty and Patan, but I don't think that's enough to fill the void. The defensive group outside of Hicketts is young and needs some seasoning. And while there's good talent up front there's good talent up front in the top 6, I'm less optimistic about the bottom 6. I think goaltending can power them to some gritty, low-scoring wins in games they maybe don't belong in. But I think this team also overall continues to be physical, occasionally goon it up a little bit. That is the Tim Army way. But this looks like a team that just misses the playoffs again this season.
I'm just making this correlation here. Didn't Cody McLeod play for Tim Army when he was with the Avalanche too? Maybe that's where the connection was and why they brought Cody McLeod over to Iowa.
That could be.
Sorry.
I didn't know
thoughts.
Tim Army coached in Colorado?
Yes, he did.
I forgot about. Was he like an assistant?
I believe he was. Yes.
That explains why I didn't know.
Yeah, he was an assistant in Colorado. Let's see what years. 2011 to 2017. So I think Cody McLeod was in there.
Yeah, probably somewhere.
Yeah. But anyway, late night thoughts with CC Hockley. We've got another team to cover. One more, Shawnee. One more. Let's talk about the Grand Rapids Griffins. Winding out the basement here in the Central, 21-22 team record was 33 wins and 43 losses. Again, 7th place out of 7 teams in the Central. Head coach Ben Simon, 116 wins, 131 losses as an AHL head coach, 1 playoff appearance, 0-1 in an AHL playoff series. His assistant coaches are Matt McDonald and Todd Krieger. Additions, subtractions. You'll take additions. I'll take subtractions.
I was told there would be no math.
Ah.
So in the additions category, although he is with Detroit right now, I imagine at some point we'll see Elmer Soderblom, a glue guy, if you will. Cross Hannes, Pontus Andreasson. There we go. Yes. Cedric Lacroix, Austin Zarnik, Joel Esperance, Matt Luff, Emil Viro, Albert Johansson, Simon Edvinson, Juho Olkinora.
There we go.
And John Lethemon.
They're just adding all the Scandinavian players this year.
Yeah.
Can I buy a vowel, please? All right. Subtraction. Hayden Verbeek. Adios. Dennis Yan. Riley Barber, again, in Texas now. Turner Elson. Patrick Curry. Josh Dickinson. Ryan Murphy. Dan Renouf. And Mr. Picks himself, Calvin Pickard. I definitely got the easier half of the additions. Right? That was not intended. I am so sorry for that, Sean. But hey, let's talk forwards, and at least you can pronounce this name.
Joel Esperance.
Hey.
And I mean, veteran from the Texas system that we just talked about, comes over to the Grand Rapids side of things. And there's a lot to like about his game. He has good puck skills in tights, can deke out defenders. He's a very good shooter. More of a shooter than a playmaker, as his playmaking vision isn't that good, but he does sneak in some nice assists from time to time. He does play a 200-foot game that also includes solid penalty kill work. He's not a great skater and won't be a big asset on the rush, unfortunately. It's also likely that's why he doesn't stick at the NHL level. Still, he's a proven goal scorer at the AHL level, and as we say many a time here, goal scoring ability and shooting talent is the most valuable hockey skill you can have. And if you have it, some team will continue to employ you. L'Esperance has it. Here he is.
Next up, returning from last season is Jonathan Berggren. Berggren's playmaking game is likely one of the best in the AHL. It's more than just passing to teammates. It's that he finds ways to get the puck to teammates through traffic and defenders that other forwards in this league quite simply cannot. His playmaking vision, puck skills, and hockey IQ just dazzle. And if you've ever seen him play, you know right away he's got something special. The kid's got he's got something special. His skating and shooting are around league average, and he occasionally struggles with pace, but he can thread needles with the best of them. And if he can take steps forwards on those other skills, my guess, he's not going to be in Grand Rapids much longer. He's going to get the call up to Detroit. So keep an eye out for him.
Familiar face that we can talk about here, Daryl Hirose. In terms of production, his 21-22 was almost a carbon copy of his bubble season. And given how performances in the bubble year have been translating, I'd say that's an impressive thing for Hirose. I don't expect much to change for him this season. He's still a very good playmaker at the AHL level with good puck skills. His skating continues to improve, but I don't think it's ever going to be a strength for him. Defensively, he's fine. Doesn't contribute, a ton, or does contribute, but he's not a hero, despite the name. Hirose will need to find chemistry with others in the lineup now, as his primary trigger man has set up the barbershop in Texas.
Yes, he has. Another guy returning from Grand Rapids. Well, yeah, Kyle Criscuolo. He played for Grand Rapids last year, right?
Correct.
It's all blending together. I can't keep it straight. Criscuolo, another solid but unspectacular season. He continued to fit the role of solid defensive forward with a good offensive upside very well. I still think he pairs best with the more offensively minded line mates, more offensive first line mates, though. His skill set fits well with that. He's got average puck skills and shooting talent. His vision in transition and in the offensive zone is above average, though. He's also a pretty good skater. Defensively is where most of the value comes in. He's solid and puts in the work in the defensive zone. Regardless, he belongs in the top 6 and on a PK1 unit. And with you opening a beverage over there, Kyle Criscuolo, now dubbed Kyle Crisp Coca-Cola. I've made it so.
Let's talk about Austin Czarnik. Czarnik was for Bridgeport last season what he's been at the AHL level for a while now. Pretty much a point per game forward. I mean, I think he was 1 point below point per game, but we're big believers in rounding up here. Even on an offensively poor team like the Sound Tigers last season, he still managed to put in just about a point per game. At the AHL level, Czarnik has very good offensive skills, primarily driven by his very good playmaking vision. His puck skills are good, but they're not great. Czarnik's problem has always been his size paired with his skating. He's a decent skater, but lacks the speed to put defenders on their heels. And at the NHL level, that keeps him on the perimeter. But he's able to work at the AHL level and get inside more and play with a little more pace. Still, he should be a top forward and an improved offensive Grand Rapids team this season, as long as Detroit doesn't call him up, in November and keep him.
Lastly, from the forwards that we're going to talk about from the Griffins tonight, Giovanni Smith. Offensively, his skill set is above average for the AHL. He has very good puck skills, especially in tight. He's got good playmaking vision, and his shooting is around average. His big value comes from his forechecking ability that's powered by his skating and his tenacity along the walls and in front of the net. He's able to go win pucks in dirty areas and finish plays once he has them. Defensively, he's an asset and can be counted on to contribute in his own end. Smith does need to work on playing his game, but staying out of the box. There's that discipline factor to it. He's a valuable asset to the Griffins offense, and no player in the history of hockey, as we've said before, has ever scored a goal from the penalty box. So up the discipline, and Giovanni Smith has got much more upside to him.
Switching over to the defensive side here and talking about Jared McIsaac, who was finally healthy enough to play 70 games last season. I never thought we would see this day. But it still felt like it took him a while to shake off the rust and look like the Jared McIsaac we expected. I think we even had an episode in the middle of the last season where he still does not look okay. And that eventually faded, and we saw him start to kind of emerge a little bit. But it's hard to say that those injuries haven't hurt too, as his skating and his physicality are strengths of his. Offensively, he's solid, but an unspectacular playmaker. He can find teammates in the offensive zone, but doesn't leave the safety of his blue line too often. Defensively, he's reliable in his own zone and a valuable asset in defending the rush. I'm hoping to see more steps forward for McIsaac, who's missed so much crucial time in development with injuries. I know I'm rooting for him to battle through it, and I hope he makes it.
Next up in the decor for Grand Rapids, Donovan Sebrongo. I don't think it's a big shock to say that Sebrongo struggled last season. Again, most teenagers don't do so hot in the AHL. However, the teenagers that are thrust into American Hockey League action usually have a bit more in the toolbox than Sebrongo. He's around an average skater, shooter, and playmaker. What was his standout skill was his ability to see moves ahead and make timely passes in transition. That hasn't materialized very well for Sebrongo in Grand Rapids. Again, he's still very young, but this needs to be a season where we see forward progress in his development. Whether that be his raw tools or his ability to process the game, there needs to be some steps forward because there's only so much ice time on the blue line in Grand Rapids, and there is a lot of guys hungry for it. Also, did you know Donovan Sebrongo's dad played in the late 90s for Cuba's national soccer team, and that he legally immigrated to Canada? A lot of people say that he defected from Cuba in the late 90s. No, it was a legal immigration progress up to Canada.
His dad or him?
His dad.
Okay.
Yeah, his dad. And then they settled in Canada, and now Donovan's playing hockey. So, yeah, fun facts.
All right. Let's talk about Wyatt Newpower. Like many from that 2021 Cleveland Monsters team, I'm starting to think that offensive upside was a mirage. Newpower has had good offensive zone habits, but he lacks the skill set to really get more production on the score sheet. He occasionally joins the rush. He can make good plays, but he's very risk averse and doesn't like to attack in the offensive zone. He's also not that good a shooter, and his shot selection doesn't help matters as he tries to fire from distance too often. Defensively, he's aggressive and can break up plays in the neutral zone with his good skating. However, his aggression can backfire and he can get caught too far up ice. He's not terribly physical either in his own end or, trying to hold guys up along the boards. He'll hit guys, but not in a way that's very punishing, more of just kind of politely separating them from the puck with his shoulder. All in all, he's still a solid defenseman, but a clear second pairing guy at best.
Next up, lastly, we're going to talk about Simon Edvinsson. Edvinsson is yet another teenage first-round pick that's going to debut in the AHL this season. Just keep making tallies on the chalkboard because we've got quite a few of them this year. I think we're up to 6 now, just this season alone, maybe 7 or 8.
I've already lost count. Does the AHL have like a daycare program? Because we're going to start needing to look into that.
Gosh. I think Edvinsson is the one I worry about the least, though. I also think that there's a chance that Detroit calls him up midseason and just never sends him back. Edvinsson has a ridiculous skill set. He has very good skating, bordering on high end. He's a very good playmaker and has excellent puck skills. What's more ridiculous is that he has all that skill and he is 6'6" and 207 pounds. And he can actually throw that body around quite violently. And while he's physical in the defensive zone, some of the coverage portions, it still eludes him. Like every teenager coming into the AHL for the first time, I think he takes a bit to get up to speed. But when he does, good luck to everyone else. Jeez.
And there are plenty of other young notables on this Grand Rapids team as well, but we're going to highlight just 2 of them because, I'm trying to go to bed at some point. Let's start with Albert Johansson. To be fair, Johansson probably should have been written to the top 4 portion of this, segment, but we already had Wyatt Newpower written up there, and it seemed unfair to leave him out of the preview, so here we are. Johansson is another highly touted prospect in Grand Rapids this season. He's one with a lot of speed, and he's not afraid to use it. You're going to see him go from his goal line into the offensive zone with a puck quite a few times this season. He loves to start, join, and finish the rush. He's also going to jump down in the cycle as well. He can make plays in all 3 zones. He's a gifted playmaker, and he's not a slouch in his own end and is aggressive at pressuring puck carriers. He's another one to keep an eye on this season in Grand Rapids and what looks like a very young but potentially a very stacked blue line.
We are going to talk about one more guy, and that's Emo Viro. Unlike most of the other defensive prospects on the list, Viro is more of a defensive defenseman. He's not the most physical defender, but takes away threats through solid coverage and good stick. His defensive skating and edge work also keep him from getting shrugged off by forwards looking to pull up and find a trailer. Offensively, he plays a low-risk game. he's not one to join the rush or really activate off the blue line either. Still, he's another solid, useful defenseman. And like you said, Sean, this blue line for Grand Rapids, it's actually going to be quite loaded. So that segues well into our next topic, because if you have a good blue line, if you got a good defensive core, the goalie's job is going to be that much easier. So there you go. Let's talk netminders.
Yeah, this is where the outlook for Grand Rapids takes a very sharp pivot. No Calvin Pickard this year. No real veteran on the roster that I can point to and be like, that's someone who I can trust in net for sure.
Right.
First up, we have Victor Brockstrom, and not the season we were hoping from Victor Brockstrom. Granted, the defense in front of him was not great at times. Still, the large Swede did not perform well in his first season in North America. If he bounces back this season, it's going to be because of better development in his puck tracking and movement. He's a big goalie who has some athleticism, but I don't think his technique is bad, but he struggled at keeping up with the play, and his movement looked busy at times, especially as things started to unwind in front of him. Given the pedigree of who he's sharing the net with this season in Grand Rapids, I don't think he'll be given a big leash, so he's going to need to come out of the gates ready to go, ready to stop pucks this year. Does he do it? Not holding my breath.
Yeah, we'll see, because the guy that's also going to be sharing some time with him is Sebastian Cossa. And, I tell you, it's understandable why the Red Wings moved on from the Caden Fulcher project. Yeah, they're probably like good riddance to that. But 6'6" Cossa has the size, natural ability, and the sheer athleticism. Again, like Jesper Wallstedt, it's going to put him on top 3, top 5 NHL goalie prospect lists. Like, he is abiding there currently. And for a pretty big dude, a big goaltender, he also boasts above average movement, positioning, and recovery. That is huge, no pun intended, for a guy that is Kossa's size. The power of his lateral pushes as well, it's also really super impressive. A concern with Cossa, however, is going to be his consistency, because as we know, goaltending is voodoo, and you can be pretty inconsistent sometimes. That's a problem that Cossa has currently. He can look like a world beater on certain nights, and then you can go out and let him multiple soft goals the very next game. However, he does boast great shot patience and reflex, so a lot more positives than there is negatives. Again, he just needs to maintain that consistency. And don't be surprised if Brockstrom and Cossa possibly go 1A and 1B this season. Yeah, probably a pretty short leash, like you mentioned, with Brockstrom.
All right, let's talk about the team as a whole here, but not in a serious way, in like a loose, brainstormy, just vibes kind of way. Grand Rapids, they really should be a better team this season, even after the barbershop closed and Turner Elson went to Hartford. The additions of L'Esperance and Zarnik should have them coming out ahead of that equation. The offense has a lot of veterans who have established games that you should know and you should trust. You know what you're going to get from them. Guys like Zarnik, Esperance, Smith. I do think it's also likely you see reinforcements come down from Detroit as Fabry and Wallman get healthy. The other side is concerning, though, as the defense lacks what I would call a true steady veteran puck mover like what Ryan Murphy was last year. And I can't say with confidence that Edvinsson or Johansson play even 30 games in the AHL before Detroit's like, no, actually, we need you. We're trying to do a playoff thing here again. Both goalies on the roster are also young, and while Cossa is a highly touted pedigree, he could easily struggle with the transition as a teenager in the AHL, a thing that, nearly all of them do. Like, the number of teenagers that are successful right out of the gates in the AHL is a list you can count on one shop teacher's hand. All right. But Brockstrom also did not look great last season and likely won't be able to hold down the fort while Cossa gets up to speed. I like the team in front of him. I think the defense should be good if they are unproven at this point, but they're going to need the goaltending to hold up if they want to go places this season. This is another team where I'm going to say they have talent, but they're going to go as far as the goaltending takes them and no further.
Stay tuned. It may be another basement dwelling season for Grand Rapids this year.
I will say, though, one thing about Grand Rapids, last year was a rough season to watch as a Grand Rapids Griffin fan. Yeah. Even if the team isn't, doing well in the wins and losses column, this is going to be a fun team to watch. They're going to play in some absolute barn burner track meets this season. And if nothing else, that's entertaining. I like a good 6-5 game, and I think there's a chance they get in a bunch of them. So even if they aren't winning a bunch of games this year, they will be a much more fun team to watch. And I think if nothing else, that should, soften the pain if they don't turn out to be a team that's making playoff pushes.
All righty then. Over 2 hours. That will do it for the Central Division. Hey, 3 divisions down now and only 1 to go.
A huge one.
Yes. Yeah, the 10-team Pacific coming up.
Who made a 10-team division?
The AHL, after not even having a Pacific division 6-7 seasons ago.
What are you doing to me, Scott Housen? What are you doing to me?
Well, hey, that's it for this show, though. Thank you for listening and or watching. Or listening. Yeah, watching and or listening. Oh, gosh, it's late. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and, hey, pro wrestling programs at fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website. Brrr, big old list populating. And enjoy. And, hey, all the great shows out there, hockey, Full Press, otherwise, and you choose to spend it with us, we appreciate it. We are grateful. Thank you.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. These season previews, they're only really useful when you watch them before the season. Yeah. You're catching it in November or, a week later because you don't have a subscription and you just happen to pass through it. It's not really doing you much good. So don't do that. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us at. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing that review thing, the liking button, the leaving comments, that helps other people find the show because a lot of, search engines on these podcast hosts and our YouTube page, they go by, popularity. So the more reviews we have, the more comments, the more interaction, the better it is for us and the easier it is for other people to find the show. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter and at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more, including a place you can buy this nice sweatshirt, can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Cece, where can the people find you?
Well, my name is CC Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL. That's where we tweet out the news and notes of the American Hockey League. My personal Twitter account at CCHawk, SEESEEHAWK. There's hockey stuff. There's also music stuff. There's also pro wrestling stuff. Hopefully, if it keeps me interested, it's not going to be bullshit for you. Check out my writing and the writing of the great AHL staff, NHL staff, everyone that works for Full Press coverage on the hockey side of things at fullpresshockey.com. Sean, enough about me and the writing crew over there. Where can the people find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. Eventually, the stats page for this 22-23 season will get made, and that will be on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. All lowercase, all one word. CC, it is 1:31 in the morning on the East Coast. Please, for the love of God, take us home.
Gladly, bud. That'll do it for episode number 114, the 2022-23 Central Division preview. For Sean O'Brien, I'm CC Hockley. Go get some rest, Shawnee. Until then, keep your stick on the ice.